Good afternoon. My name is Nathan Hockman. I'm the Los Angeles County District Attorney. Today I am here to announce that Judge Charlene Olmedo held David Anthony Burke, who goes by the name of the singer David, spelled D4VD, to answer for the horrific and barbaric killing of a 13-year-old at the time, 14-year-old at the time, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. He has held him to answer for first-degree murder with the special circumstances of lying in wait, doing this crime for financial gain, and murdering a witness to an investigation. David Anthony Burke has also been held to answer for the mutilation of the remains of Celeste Rivas Hernandez on September 8, 2025, and he has also been held to answer for engaging in continuous lewd and lascivious acts with a 13-year-old. What we have seen in this preliminary hearing, and the preliminary hearing was conducted by one of our most experienced deputy district attorneys, who is right here, Beth Silverman, and her team, working with the Los Angeles Police Department's Robbery Homicide Division. They methodically presented over 5 different days before Judge Olmedo the evidence that showed, and at this point we had to show it by probable cause. But by probable cause, and I would argue, by an overwhelming amount of probable cause, and we will eventually prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. They followed the timeline of the interactions between Celeste Rivas Hernandez when she started as a 12-year-old, then a 13-year-old, then a 14-year-old, who never got to see her 15th birthday. Because in the intervening time, where she had these interactions with Mr. Burke, he engaged in this sexual conduct with a 13-year-old repeatedly, over and over again. This came out in text messages that were presented, in videos and photographs that were presented to the judge that showed this sexual activity. Ms. Silverman methodically tracked the timeline of their interactions during 2022, 23, 24, 25. It eventually led to the time where Celeste Rivas Hernandez went over to Mr. Burke's house in the Hollywood Hills on April 23rd, 2025, and has never been heard of again. But what Ms. Silverman and her team were able to show to Judge Olmedo is that on April 23rd, 2025, what actually happened was the brutal and horrific murder of Ms. Hernandez, and thereafter, over the ensuing 5 months, how her body was chopped up, left in the front trunk of a Tesla, only to be discovered on September 8th, 2025, after the car, this is Mr. Burke's car, had been towed to a tow yard. What now happens is that there will be an information that will be filed within the next week or so. That information will track these 3 felony counts that have already appeared in the complaint. August 31st will be the arraignment on that information. Thereafter, there will be a trial that will be set. That trial can be set as early as 60 days. And as we saw in the preliminary hearing, where the defense demanded that they have that preliminary hearing done within the time that the law allows, and every time they want a preliminary hearing, we were ready. Often preliminary hearings in a case of this complexity take many, many more months than we've seen in this case. But when the defense demanded a quick preliminary hearing, we said, bring it on. And that's exactly what we did. If the defense wants a trial, 60 days out or whatever, they want this trial, we will be ready for that trial. So at this point, again, we don't have the additional consideration is that Mr. Burke now is eligible for the death penalty. The death penalty considerations are now being weighed. Part of that consideration will be any submission that the defense wants to submit to the district attorney's office. It is something that we will consider on whether or not we will seek the death penalty. At this point, the death penalty determination has not been made. I will now open it up for questions.
Mr. Hartman, a quick question for you. The defense, during their final arguments, they brought up a point where they said that Celeste Rivas was being very aggressive with David, and they said that he might have felt intimidated, maybe even threatened. Do you think that a self-defense argument would fly in this case?
The defense made many arguments. The defense did not present any evidence. And by the way, the defense doesn't have to do anything in a criminal case. At all points in time, a defendant is presumed innocent until unless proven guilty, and today it was by probable cause, and at a trial it will be beyond a reasonable doubt. We will have to convince 12 jurors unanimously to find every element of the crime in order to actually get a conviction. The defense has made many arguments. Again, they are arguments at this point. The arguments themselves are not evidence. If and when the defense wants to present evidence at any point, we will match and meet that evidence and overcome any of the arguments or evidence in the trial that will be upcoming.
Give us the idea of the scope without violating your secrecy. You investigate the jury, large any of evidence, you tell us about what we have it. Okay.
So the other idea that you need to have is that preliminary hearing is not designed for the prosecution to present all its evidence. Mr. Quealy is correct from the Los Angeles Times that there was additional evidence that was actually considered in this case that we anticipate being presented in trial. I'm not going to go into the specifics of that additional evidence. I'm going to say that we presented a significant but small fraction of our evidence in this preliminary hearing. At a trial, we will present all our evidence because the proof at a trial will be beyond a reasonable doubt. We will not be allowed to use certain hearsay that you can use in a preliminary hearing, but you cannot use in a trial. It has to be admissible evidence. The witnesses will need to come in to establish all the foundation, the relevancy, and overcome any objections to the type of evidence. So you are correct. There will be additional and significant evidence presented in a trial that wasn't presented here in this preliminary hearing.
Mr. Hoffman, there was testimony.
The evidence that we did see, particularly on Friday, I think was from, I think fair to say, very graphic, very difficult. Both of you have worked in many cases over the span of your careers. How would you say the evidence in this case strikes you and how does it stand up against other cases that you've worked over the course of the time?
We believe that the evidence at trial will be overwhelming to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt on the 3 charges with which Mr. Burke will be charged. You got a small preview of some of that evidence, including the text messages and the video and photographic evidence that was also presented directly to the judge. This was difficult evidence to even hear, but also the crime that we are dealing with is incredibly horrific and barbaric. And it's not shocking that the evidence that would prove a horrific and barbaric crime would itself also be very difficult to deal with and to watch and listen to. That is the evidence. We'll make sure that the jury eventually has all the evidence in order to reach a verdict in this case.
Excuse me, Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Hoffman.
But today the defense presented text and said the workers were making.
I'm sorry, you have to speak up just a touch.
Yes, the family previously said that they didn't approve of David or Celeste's relationship, but they the defense presented text and said otherwise. What do you think?
So again, we have said this before, the unspeakable tragedy that the Rivas Hernandez family has had to go through to first lose their daughter, but to then find out how they lost their daughter is something that there are no words to do. All we can do at the district attorney's office is bring justice in this case by bringing that killer to justice. That killer is David Anthony Burke, and we intend to bring him to justice before a jury at a trial in the upcoming future.
One more question. Mr.
Hoffman, there was some testimony that other people around David, maybe family members or managers, knew about this relationship. Have you ruled out other defendants or what do you think about that?
Again, at trial, we will bring in all relevant evidence that will establish all the elements of the crimes that have been charged. You heard a preview of that evidence in the preliminary hearing, whether it was, again, certain witness testimony, certain text messages, videos, photographs, there will be business records, and there will also be witnesses that are recipient witnesses. They have information that is relevant to establish the mental state of David Anthony Berg and the acts he committed. That evidence will be presented at trial, at the end of which we will be seeking a verdict of guilt on the 3 counts of which he will be charged: first-degree murder with the special circumstances of lying in wait, doing it for financial gain, and eliminating a witness in connection with that case, mutilation of human remains, and engaging in a continuous series of sexual acts with a minor that are lewd and lascivious acts. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That is time.
Will you be calling the parents to testify?
Okay, let me grab that. I'm going to keep talking. So that was the DA and the deputy DA basically giving their thoughts on everything that had kind of transpired today, and it was a very, very interesting update. Really like a victory lap for them, having kind of spent such a difficult and just depressing week of such just horrific testimony. So absolute ultimate respect to the DA and the Deputy District DA for essentially just following through and pursuing what everybody really in this situation wants, which is to see justice for Celeste and to see the safety restored to the community. So I'm really, really happy to see the result today. Congratulations to the District Attorney's Office for getting the result that they were looking for, the result that a lot of people thought was coming, but now we're actually seeing it play out. For real life, for everyone to see. No more of this kind of nonsense, he didn't do it, all this kind of stuff. So we're going to see the full-blown trial, but clearly there was enough evidence for probable cause. Even right at the end, it was pretty laughable, some of the arguments that they were trying to make, saying, oh, can we get all the charges dropped because you haven't proved this, that, and the other, and, there's no murder weapon, you can't prove what David was doing while he was at his property when Celeste pulled up. You can't even prove that he was inside the house, could have been outside the house. You only triangulated him to the nearby area. It was kind of some pretty nonsense arguments that were being brought forward. But obviously we're going to find out what goes on when it comes to full-blown trial. So I'm going to do another video giving you guys a bit more of an update on everything that I observed today, and then I'm probably going to go home, do a bigger breakdown. I'm going to kind of assess my options because obviously I've got this issue I'm dealing with YouTube at the moment. I'm going to try and work out if I can either get that video back somehow in some shape or form, or do another breakdown, and maybe I should do a whole new breakdown of the text messages and just find... I don't even know what I'm allowed to tell you guys at this point. So I've got a whole bunch of notes, and I'll keep you guys posted. But for now, actually, I think we're about to see, we might be seeing an update from Celeste's actual family lawyer, who is actually the civil lawyer who is working on this. So let's see what he's got to say. We're gonna try and catch up with him. Can I give you this? Boom.
Last 5 days, it seemed the light of day, which agreed 100% with the prosecution that the evidence was sufficient for accountable for these charges. Families relieved that it's done with. They're going to take a break, and they appreciate the hard work that the District Attorney's Office has done, as well as the investigation by LAPD investigators, Corey Farrell, and Detective Byers. And they also wanted to thank the media for your coverage. They haven't appeared before the media. They're very private individuals, and so they hope that you understand that even though they haven't appeared before the media, that they're grateful for the media's continued coverage and keeping Celeste's name in the news. The defense attorneys brought up some evidence that was deemed inadmissible at this preliminary hearing. They made allegations that didn't have any evidentiary basis, including the assertion that Celeste may have committed suicide or that Celeste was violent. And I personally found that very disturbing. It seems that the defense attorneys are stopping at nothing in an attempt to discredit the prosecution's evidence. And the family was horrified that the defense attorneys brought up evidence to put the blame on a 14-year-old child. I want you to remember February 17th, 2024. That is when Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy did a welfare check on the home of David Anthony Burke and informed David that Celeste Rivas was 13 years old. David Anthony Burke has taken the position that Celeste said she was 18. He didn't know she was a child, but he knew because he was told in February of 2024 that Celeste was only 13 years old. This is a strict liability crime, meaning that if he's 18 and she's 13 and they're having sexual relations, that is automatically a crime. He does not have a defense. However, he had direct knowledge of Celeste's age and continued in their sexual relationship. So I find it important that the defense attorneys are trying to put any blame whatsoever on this young child. David Anthony Burke is known for a song called Romantic Homicide, and only a sick, disturbed mind like David Anthony Burke would think that a homicide is romantic. Thank you very much.
Can you address some of the evidence?
Thank you.
Is there anything you want to say about what this
Man, that's all good. All right, so now we've just heard from the family civil lawyer. He's given his thoughts. It was definitely a mic drop moment for him to say there's nothing romantic about a homicide, and that David basically was making music, was making money. I think what's interesting is obviously, his role is essentially to pursue the civil lawsuit against David. That'll be the civil litigation, the wrongful death lawsuit. Realistically, millions of dollars are on the table for that. And it's highly likely that David and his family will lose potentially everything in this because the crime was so heinous, it was so obvious, and his career had so many moments in it that really were related to the crime. Lyrics about it, music videos about it, a bunch of lookalikes in the music videos. It beggars belief. The amount that this guy snitched on himself and the amount that he intertwined his business with his crimes, essentially. I think it is going to be a rough one when it comes to the civil case. I don't think it's very likely that he's going to do very well in the criminal proceedings, but I think when it comes to the civil proceedings, I think he's going to be in a whole lot of trouble. It's probably going to be easier for them to prove the civil side of things. I mean, realistically, you saw O.J. Simpson beat his criminal case, but end up basically losing everything and being financially ruined for the rest of his life because of the civil suit. His ex-wife and Ron Goldman's family and their respective lawyers put forward towards OJ. So I think David and his family are going to lose everything. I think that it's very likely that he's going to lose this case based on the evidence we've seen today, and there's even more. And as Celeste's family lawyer said, I just want to make it very clear, the family are hurt and disagree with any of these wrongful portrayals of them as being complicit or knowledgeable about what was going on. I've said from the very beginning, I don't think the family knew the extent of what was going on. I think it's possible that either they were misled as well, or they simply were unable to actually, participate in stopping what was going on. And what I'm hearing, they actually did their best. They did as much as they possibly could to essentially stop this from going on. But anyway, I'm going to do a longer update for you guys. I'm going to find another spot to just knuckle down privately and get some updates out to you guys. But thank you for supporting the coverage, and rest in peace to Celeste. Justice is definitely on its way.